Hello, students. Hope you are doing well. Welcome to PS Galaxy. Let's continue with chapter 3, which we have started in our last video. Now, let's start. Mahalwari Settlement. In the year 1833, the Mahalwari settlement was introduced in the Punjab, the central province, and part of northwestern province. Under this system, the basic unit of revenue settlement was the village or the mahals. As the village lands belonged jointly to the village community, the responsibility of paying the revenue rested with the entire mahals or the village community. So the entire land of the village was measured at the time of fixing the revenue. Though the Mahalwari settlement eliminated middlemen between the government and the village community and brought about improvement in irrigation facility, yet its benefit was largely enjoyed by the government. All these manners of revenue collection almost uniformly affected the poor peasants. Throughout the year, they remained excluded from any control over land and power. This caused grievance among the members of the rural society. The grievance of this class of society of North India were soon to be expressed rather loudly and violently in the subsequent revolt. Now, let's discuss about cultivation of indigo in India. Indigo, a blue dye, was in high demand in Europe. It was used for coloring the blue serge uniforms worn by the British police force and hospital staff. It was also used as the color of clothing worn by military personnel and millions of workmen. This is how the term blue collar worker was coined in Europe. Indigo is among the oldest dyes to be used for textile dyeing and printing, and India is believed to be the oldest center of indigo dyeing. It supplied indigo to Europe as early as the Greco-Roman era. Indigo was a rare commodity in Europe throughout the Middle Age. It was only after the Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama discovered a sea road to India towards the end of the 15th century that it found its way to Europe. Now, let's see why indigo in India was highly in demand. After the Industrial Revolution in England, there was a huge demand for the dye, especially in textile industries. By this time, machines in Manchester produced large amount of cotton fabric which had to be dyed. Since the climate of Britain was not suitable to produce the crop, it had to be imported from the Caribbean islands and North America. Thus, the British turned to India, where indigo was cultivated since the medieval times. But in India, till that point of time, it used to be cultivated only in a portion of the cultivable land. This indigo cultivation was traditionally carried out through the niche and rayati system. Now let's see how was indigo cultivated in India. There were two main systems of indigo cultivation, niche and rayati. Within the system of niche cultivation, the planter produced indigo in lands that he directly controlled. He either bought the land or rented it from other zamindars and produced indigo by directly employing hired laborers. But the planters found it difficult to expand the area under niche cultivation. Indigo could be cultivated only on fertile lands, and these were already densely populated. Only small plots scattered over the landscape could be acquired. Planters needed large areas in compact blocks to cultivate indigo in plantation. Where could they get such land from? They attempted to lease in the land around the indigo factory and evict the peasants from the area, but this always led to conflict and tension. Nor was labor easy to mobilize. A large plantation required a vast number of hands to operate, and labor was needed precisely at a time when peasants were usually busy with their rice cultivation. On the other hand, niche cultivation on a large scale also required many plows and bullocks. 1 bighah of indigo cultivation required 2 plows. This means that a planter with 1,000 bighas would need 2,000 plows. Investing on purchase and maintenance of plows was a big problem, nor could supplies be easily got from the peasants since their plows and bullocks were busy on their rice field exactly at the time that the indigo planters needed them. Till the late 19th century, planters were therefore reluctant to expand the area under niche cultivation. Less than 25% of the land producing indigo was under this system. The rest was under an alternative mode of cultivation, that is, the royalty system. Under the royalty system, the planters forced the ryots to sign a contract, an agreement, also known as sata. At times, they pressurized the village headman to sign the contract on behalf of the ryots. Those who signed the contract got cash advance from the planters at low rates of interest to produce indigo, but the loan committed the ryot for cultivating indigo on at least 25% of the area under his holding. The planter provided the seed and the drill, while the cultivators prepared the soil, sowed the seed, and looked after the crop. When the crop was delivered to the planters after the harvest, a new loan was given to the ryot, and the cycle started all over again. Patients who were initially tempted by the loans soon realized how harsh the system was. The price they got for the indigo they produced was very low, and the cycle of loans never ended. There were other problems too. The planters usually insisted that indigo be cultivated on the best soil, in which patients preferred to cultivate rice. Indigo, moreover, had deep roots and it exhausted the soil fertility rapidly. After an indigo harvest, the land could not be sowed with rice. These two systems of indigo cultivation lead to a rebellion which was known as Blue Rebellion. Now, let's discuss the Blue Rebellion. In March 1859, thousands of ryots in Bengal refused to grow indigo. As the rebellion spread, ryots refused to pay rents to the planters and attacked indigo factories armed with swords and spears, bows and arrows. Women turned up to fight with pots, pans, and kitchen implements. Those who worked for the planters were socially boycotted, and the Gomastas, who were agents of planters who came to collect rent, were beaten up. As the rebellion spread, intellectuals from Kolkata rushed to the indigo districts. They wrote of the misery of the riots, the tyranny of the planters, and the horrors of the indigo system. Worried by the rebellion, the government brought in the military to protect the planters from assault and set up the Indigo Commission to inquire into the system of indigo production. The commission held the planters guilty and criticized them for the coercive method they used with indigo cultivators. It declared that indigo production was not profitable for ryots. The commission asked the ryots to fulfill their existing contract but also told them that they could refuse to produce indigo in future. After the revolt, indigo production collapsed in Bengal, but the planters now shifted their operation to Bihar. With the discovery of synthetic dyes in the late 19th century, their business was severely affected, but yet they managed to expand production. When Mahatma Gandhi returned from South Africa, a patient from Bihar persuaded him to visit Champaran and see the plight of the indigo cultivators there. Mahatma Gandhi's visit in 1917 marked the beginning of the Champaran movement against the indigo planters. With this, we come to an end of chapter 3. Thank you.